This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Ahoy! Captain David Gallimore welcomes you aboard the Regenerate Show, live Mondays, 10 a.m. Pacific on K4HD Radio at k4hd.com. We dive into the real messy work of transforming our lives, leadership, and organizations. Bring your hot mess and confusion. Leave with clarity, courage, and confidence. Together, let's strengthen our resilience, accelerating the health of ourselves, people, planet, and profits. Now, here's your host, Captain Dave, your personal regenerator. All aboard!
Ahoy! I'm excited to welcome you to the 9th episode of Regenerate. Our theme this week is personal and professional transformation. You know, what would it take to transform yourself, your team, your organization? This is the question that I first started to ask myself almost 4 years ago. To become not just a better person and a better leader, but to make a positive difference in the world, to create more joy, professional freedom, and wealth, while creating a better world faster. So this is perhaps my most vulnerable and authentic show to date. I've purposely not invited a guest to join me today. So this is a little scary to be out there alone for 45 or so minutes. But I believe that overcoming that fear and uncertainty and doubt is part of the journey that I'm on. I suspect that, just like with my guests, the last 8 episodes, some magic will unfold. It's not clear yet how that might be. So I'm excited to see how this progresses. And I look forward to your comments and support if you have a chance to provide those. I always read and listen to comments. As you know, if you've been a part of the show, our promise to you is to have some fun today. If we're laughing, we're learning. And I'll be laughing at myself more than a few times, I assure you. I want to leave you inspired, and especially to leave you empowered. And I just invite you to pick up a pen, take some notes, consider applying just one idea or mindset shift that you hear today on the Regenerate Show, because transformations happen here. So what's the moment that first showed you who you really were? Some people think of this as the origin story. It's not a bio, it's not a resume, it's not a CV. It's the circumstances in our lives that shape us, that define us, that help us become who we were meant to be. Often it's circumstances that are not what we originally asked for, and some of them were very, very hard. And I think in the coming minutes, as I share with you my origin story, you'll get a feel for how these kinds of opportunities, living our lives the best that we can, the good, the bad, and the ugly, they forge us, the crucible of life. So my origin story begins as a young lad of a British father from Sheffield, England, and a Canadian mother, Eastern Canada, Toronto, Ontario. And I was that kid in elementary school waiting at the bus wearing these British galoshes and a dark wool bone jacket, sometimes carrying an instrument and kind of talking a little bit differently, using more European and Commonwealth language. So I never quite fit in. I was that outsider. And I was able to navigate across these different groups, the academic group, the jocks, the musicians. But I frankly felt most comfortable being around adults. I guess I was a bit of an old soul. But I did have this ability at a young age to bring fun and lead interesting activities, not just during recess, but also after school. So everything from arranging kickball and touch football um, to designing and creating hydroplanes in wood that we would then pull behind our bikes. I organized carnivals with my sister Pamela, and we raised money. Not very much money, a few dollars here and there. This was back in the 1960s for muscular dystrophy, and yet was often feeling alone inside. And to belong, I tended to try to overachieve. My self worth was definitely tied to the results that I was creating in my life. And my parents were parents in the 60s and 70s where children were more like a lump of clay to be molded than what my wife, Margaret, who she and I have been married now for 35 years, we took the tact of our children, Ian and Catherine, are really land to grow and evolve, and we're just stewards of the land, stewards of their lives. I did fall victim sometimes in parenting like my dad, and I regret that. But those were that era, and how to feel good about oneself when parents were often very critical, especially my dad, very accomplished engineer, director of quality at Boeing, very smart, very accomplished, terrific public speaker, a great leader. And I aspired to be like him, but at the same time, it was very intimidating. So I became very much an approval junkie. I won a lot of different awards and was accomplished musician, got to play the Grieg piano concerto with my high school orchestra, and was the drum major for 2 years where we doubled the size of the band. So there was some really incredible experiences that I had growing up in school. And the other one that I wanted to tell briefly was I learned to sail when I was 5, dad being an aeronautical engineer. And when we trimmed that sloop, little 12-foot Yachting World Cadet Pram, and that boat accelerated, oh my gosh, it was magic. The freaking magic of lift. And how could we, my mom and dad, my sister and I, sail upwind? I was hooked. And at 7, I snuck the sailboat off the dock, and the squall came through. If you've ever been on the water, when that black cloud, that line is moving quickly towards you, and in front of it is lightning and thunder and high wind, and I'm out there alone in this little 12-foot pram sailing along. And I forgot that I needed to luff, which is point the bow into the squall. Instead, I ran away like all good 7-year-olds should do in the face of danger. But of course, I didn't let out my sails. And so I capsized. And it's the only time I've capsized in my life. And my parents are watching all of this unfold. And the best thing that they ever did was nothing. I had to figure out how to raise the boat um, from capsized position to upright, to bail the boat and sail the boat home. And from that moment on, sailing for me was freedom and responsibility, problem solving, freedom. So I was never really alone on the water. I felt like that was a place that I could really thrive. One other revelation I wanted to share is that I spent decades working in the corporate world, starting with IBM, and then moved on to a couple different startups, took one of those public, and then worked for IBM and Capt and T-Mobile, and really had the privilege of creating a lot of new valuable businesses within these large corporations, what I fondly called entrepreneuring, from my dear friends Libba and Gifford Pinchot's book by the same title. But I never felt smart enough. I never felt good enough. Again, that theme from my childhood of being an outsider and being an approval junkie and a awards junkie. Until about 4 years ago, when I had been laid off from Capgemini with another 255 other directors and VPs. I was starting a new practice. It was not yet profitable. And I was unemployed for over a year, which, as the sole provider of our family, was incredibly stressful. But what a gift, right? Going back to what I said at the start of the show, how life happens. Our character gets forged in that crucible. So I finally had to start doing some significant inner work because I wasn't getting the results when I started my company in January of 2022 as a result of the failed leadership around the globe trying to improve the health of our planet. And I was committed at that point to do what I could to clean up my own carbon footprint and inspire and empower others to do the same. So 4 years ago, I started to work on separating who I was as a person, a good person, worthy person, from a person who was not yet becoming all that he wanted to become. My transformation, the messy middle of my transformation, it was still very, very nascent. So we've had a number of guests on this show. The first one being Mathieu Graham, who helped me do a lot of really good identity work and recognizing that just by being alive, it's a miracle. And it's an incredible gift. And so I am not my results. I am not my titles. I am not the amount of money that I bring in as the provider. I play those roles, but they don't define me. And so when those results are not happening, I learned, although it's not been easy at all, that I'm enough. And I really do believe that part of our challenge in the modern world is that there's a lot of people that have not yet had to, or if they've needed to, just maybe resisted the inner work, looking at oneself and saying, who am I really? What do I stand for? What matters to me? I never felt very smart until I decided to take a formal IQ test and scored in the 130, which I'm told is pretty good. And now I feel validated a little bit more as a result of all this inner work. I believe in myself a lot more as a result of the work on the challenges that I've had. So it was funny, all those years leading others and creating some pretty amazing results. By one calculation, about $9 billion of value for IBM and Boeing, Data, Cap, T-Mobile. But I was the last person I learned to lead myself. Second story, I want to kick off with a question. And this is related to, have you ever been blindsided by something you never saw coming? So I was on a phone call. We didn't have Zoom back then. And my VP called me and told me that I was being laid off. And this was with, as I mentioned a moment ago, about 255 other VPs and directors at Capt. And I was absolutely in shock because I had just helped Capt. Grow a practice, a digital innovation practice, the previous 2.5 years that we grew from nothing to about $21 million. But more importantly, we were creating some amazing intellectual property that Capgemini then spread throughout the organization. You know, hundreds of thousands of people were leveraging our digital innovation presentations and methods and frameworks and things. I get all choked up just talking about it. We had just landed Coca-Cola and Toyota, and we're starting to do strategy work and road mapping work, and then that was going to lead to, hopefully millions of dollars of service work for the Capgemini consultants. But it was still nascent. It was not yet profitable. We're probably a good 9 months away from being profitable. And so I remember feeling not only shock, but anger, fear, shame, more fear, and then quietly joy. Because I wasn't as happy in those last years in the corporate world. It seemed like every meeting was contentious, and there was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And corporations as large as the Boeings and the Capgeminis and the T-Mobiles, they get a groupthink going. It's not a psychologically safe place to be. I was burning out. I didn't know it at the time, but clearly there were those signs of irritation and waking up at 3 a.m, not just feeling very good at all about what was going on in my professional life. But I had golden handcuffs. I was making really, really good money. And so now I wasn't. And as a sole provider, that's incredibly challenging. And I remember that I thought, okay, do I wait and tell Margaret about this? And I realized, no, she's my best friend. She's my soulmate, my partner. And I also remembered that bad news doesn't get better with age. So I remember sharing the news that same day. And she held me and we both cried. I mean, it was really heart-wrenching. I had not experienced that before. And then she asked something that really helped ground me and help me move forward. And she said, "What do you really want to be when you grow up? What do you really want to do?" And I didn't have an immediate answer for her. I think I was still very much in shock with the layoff. But what started to emerge was, "Hey, I'll think about this." And she said, "Well, just know that I have your back. I have your support. Please do whatever you choose that supports you, that fits your purpose and your mission. as long as it's legal, she said. So that question really changed everything. It gave me permission to dream again and to think a little bit about what might be my life purpose besides being a provider and being an executive leader and creating these entrepreneurial businesses for large corporations. So I will say that this origin story, meandering, I hope it's not been too meandering, but I think I have become a better person as a result of being the outsider. And I certainly have become a better person by accepting and tacking, as all good sailors do, from one form to another, and realizing that I'm not the form, I'm not the job. I am, a good person who cares deeply about people first and wants to make a difference, a positive difference in the world. One of the challenges that I think many of us are experiencing right now as parents is that our young people, young adults, especially in their 20s and early 30s, are kind of rudderless in ways. Some are very clear about what their purpose and mission is, but many are not. I see in my own family, even in my own behavior, a tendency to not want to do some of the inner work, instead scrolling YouTube shorts and Facebook reels, etc. And yet we're giving up our freedom. And so I just worry for my adult children, Ian and Catherine, as well as my grandchildren, Daisy, soon to be added this July with either Liam or Hunter. They haven't decided on a boy's name yet. But that is a real challenge, I think, for many young people to step out of the simulation of social media and Zoom calls and just all the ways that we are inundated with technology and messaging that is really not very healthy at times. And so I hope that we as parents can love up our children and our grandchildren, and do what my parents did when I was in a serious, it was quite a dangerous thing to be capsized in a squall, big white caps and lots of scary high wind. And I think sometimes young people are in the storm right now and they don't know a way to get out of it. And so they numb themselves through technology. And I think generative AI is also becoming an escape. And I have to really, really be careful myself with that. So we're going to go and have a break shortly. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what does it mean to transform personally and professionally? And are there any frameworks and tips and tricks that I have developed, test driven myself, and apply with clients all over the globe? Probably over now nearly 1,000 clients between my Seattle University Business and Law Clinic to my Bainbridge Graduate Institute Sustainable MBA, operations and business competition programs, and my private clients. So it'll be really fun to have you come back. Don't go away as you hear this important message about the Regenerate Life, Business, and Leadership program.
You're listening to Regenerate with Captain Dave, your personal regenerator on K4HD Radio. We'll be right back. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you ready to regenerate and live the life of your dreams? Start the transformation now. Call Captain Dave at 253-237-2558. Stop overthinking. Again, call 253-237-2558 or go to regenerativeworldgroup.com to book a free, no-obligation clarity call. Let's get back to Regenerate right here on K4HD Radio for more life-changing transformations. Here's your host, Captain Dave, your personal regenerator.
Welcome back. If you are just now joining us, I am my own guest on this 9th edition of the Regenerate Show. And we've been talking a little bit about origin stories and how the ups and downs of life, the challenges of life forge our character. And how I worry a little bit about the young folks in our lives, my adult children, my grandchildren, and how living in the simulation, living through social media and technology is really disconnecting us from who we are and kind of masks the need to do the inner work so that we get to know ourselves, and then we can more likely flourish, and we can continuously transform ourselves to get just a little bit clearer to our purpose, and make a difference in people's lives and have fun doing it. So now that we're back, I wanted to talk a little bit about, well, what do I mean by personal and professional transformation? It's kind of the hot word, transformation. Well, what does it mean? Well, I'm going to fall back on Joe Pine, whom I've been building a relationship since I discovered his book, The Experience Economy. And he recently released in February his new book, The Transformation Economy. And so, stealing shamelessly, but giving him credit for it, I define transformation as becoming who you want to become. And if you want to add a little nuance to that related to flourishing, again, Joe Pine, Transformation Economy, and I'll put his contact information in the show notes. And I'm excited to say he's accepted to be a guest on Regenerate, I think in about a month. So look forward to that. But the nuance related to transformation and flourishing is becoming who you were meant to become. And the nuance there is maybe what you want and who you were meant to become, they could be different. And what's fascinating to me is our subconscious, our unconscious, whatever you want to call that part of ourselves, our soul, our brains, what's the ice under the waterline of the iceberg that's really driving so much of our behavior. Being able to understand what we were meant to be. And that is a difficult question to answer. Like, who am I really? And I didn't really know the answer to that question until at 58. I'm now 64. I did an amazing experience with Jim Bunch and his team around core values. Gina Piggott led and facilitated my discovery of my core values, which are love, which includes, that's an uber value, which includes family, which is everything to me. I do everything. I exist to serve my family. It includes world peace. and community, empathy, compassion, tough love. Love is this remarkable value. And of course, the Beatles got it right when they said, "All you need is love." Bum, 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 bum. Second value is adventure. I used to have challenge as my second core value, but I was attracting way too many problems. So I decided to shift to tack, to challenge, to adventure, and way fewer problems and way more fun adventures. My third is kind of a compound word of design build. So I love the process of ideating and creating something from nothing. I remember creating those hydroplanes from just little blocks of wood and shaping them. And yes, I had a real hydroplane as a role model, but you know, how do I create that in a way that I can pull it behind my bike, and it's the most durable hydroplane when we have these collisions that we would do on bikes. So love seeing right from the idea through to the execution. And so the build is really important to me. And that design build has been an arc of my career, coming up with new ideas, but not just stopping there, but executing those ideas with other people. And then when it becomes more maintenance, I get bored and my neurodiversity ADHD kicks in, and I transfer it to somebody else and then go on and do the next thing. So the third value is leadership. Actually, that would be the fifth if we're counting. So love, adventure, create, build, kind of two different values. So number 5 is leadership. And I define leadership as influence. It's not the title, CEO or director of marketing or captain. It's influence. And that means that each one of us, regardless of the seat that we're sitting in or the role that we're playing in our families, in our teams, in our organizations, in our community, we can all be a leader. Now, it's not easy to be a person of influence. And there's kind of two types of leadership, right? There's position leadership. So you have the title of director, and you can get a lot done when you have the right title. But how many times have you been in an organization where there's the official org chart with all the titles and the names associated with them, and then there's the power chart or the influence chart of who's really making things happen in the organization? I would choose to be on the influence chart more than I would on the org chart. So leadership is everyone's business then, or the opportunity, should you choose to lean in on that. And that's what I love to do, is help young folks, next generation leaders, kind of find their own voice, understand their core values, their ikigai, their reason for being, their purpose, their brand, and then helping them take themselves to market like you would an award-winning product or service. So this is the career work that I love to do, is helping people to find who they really are at a deep, deep level and do the identity work so that they believe in themselves and reduce the imposter syndrome and become more comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that then they can create the life of their dreams that's aligned with what they're really good at, what they're passionate about, what the world needs, and what they can get paid really, really well to do. When they make their work their play, right, they can do that all day long. And so that's where I have been developing and growing in the last 4 years, really defining based on my core values. The last core value is impact. So yes, I'm still an achievement junkie. I don't know that will ever go away. I still am a pleaser. I'm sure that that will get mitigated constantly. May I outgrow it? Probably not. But I'm learning to bite my tongue and, not try to coach my own DNA. As they have reminded me many times, Dad, thank you for sharing. Too much information. Let me just live my life. And I'm learning that lesson every day. So with those core values, what I find is it's so foundational to how people can really then get much, much clearer about what kind of work they might want to do or how they want to show up in the world. Core values for me have been an amazing resource defining my definition of success. What does a great day look like? What does a great week, month, life look like? And so I ask myself in the morning during some brief journaling, okay, what's one thing that I can do today to more fully express one or more of my core values? And at the end of the day, or more likely the next morning, how did I do? And if I can keep growing and learning every day and aligning what I do and how I do it to my core values, life just flows. It really, it's like that sailboat when the jib and the main are trimmed and the boat accelerates and you go, woohoo! It feels, even though you're sailing against the wind and the boat's working really hard, and so are you, but you're using the magic of lift because you're aligned with your own purpose, your own values. So I would say if I had known in my 20s what I know in my 50s, OMG, it would have been pretty remarkable. So I know that we're coming up on the end of our show here, and I wanted to pivot a little bit more toward why did I start Regenerate? And why am I doing this regenerative world group? And the short answer is in November of 2021, the media went crazy all over the globe saying, hey, this COP 26 in Glasgow, Scotland, and COP's an acronym, community of practice. The world leaders came together to discuss what was the next 10 years from 2020 to 2030. What were we going to do collectively as a global citizenry to reduce the rising global temperatures? Largely, Mother Nature is changing, is in a receding ice age, and human beings, because of our lifestyle, at least in the United States and Europe and Asia, we're contributing a lot of carbon dioxide and methane from burning fossil fuels for transportation, for manufacturing, for agriculture, for animal husbandry. And the facts and data as I have seen them, and I'm always looking for the truth. So if you have different facts and data evidence than I do, I really, really want to hear it, because I'm continuously refining my views of what are the root causes for our more violent storms, our longer summer droughts. Here in the Seattle area, we've had more fires in the summer than I can ever remember. And last summer in particular, there was a significant Bear Gulch fire. I think it was 22,000 acres, and it was just about a mile and a half away from our cottage. So this was really in my face. This was really personal. And so I formed Regenerative World Group in January of 22, primarily to help level up leaders, their leadership within themselves, their families, their teams, their organizations, because I really believe in my heart that business could be a much bigger lever for good than it has been. And I have two role models. One is Patagonia, the outdoor apparel company. It got started by Yvon Chouinard. He's a mountaineer, and he realized that his pitons and other gadgets for rock climbing were actually harming the rock. And if so many people were banging these pieces of iron into the crevices, that in a few years, that rock wall was not going to be climbable anymore. And so he designed products that for the mountaineers that would not only give them a safe experience, but also preserve the environment. And I love this. Patagonia's belief is that their purpose is really to improve the health of the earth, and their primary stakeholder is our planet. And so they're very values-based, very, very mission-driven, huge engagement amongst their employees, and the way that they've structured the organization, even though they're publicly held, they're not nearly as motivated by short-term pressures to keep the stock price up by meeting quarterly performance metrics. And especially in this world of generative AI, where many large organizations are replacing very, very talented people with generative AI bots, intelligent agents, I just really think we have to think hard about, is that really the world that we want to live in? What are all of you talented people, especially if you're often doing digital related stuff throughout your day, anything digital is likely going to get eaten by the bot, unless we humans decide that we want to create a different world and use generative AI to enhance the human rather than replace the human worker. So for the last 4 years, I have been on this mission from God. If you remember the Jim Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, yes, I am dating myself a little bit, their movie, The Blues Brothers. And I'm on a mission from God to level people up, because my belief is that if they're willing to do the work, like I was willing to do the work the last 4 years, and find out what their ikigai is, right? What they're gifted at, what they love to do, what the world needs, and what they can be well compensated. If they do the core values work, they do the ikigai work, they find out what their personal brand, by the way, mine is the Explorer brand. Well, then they're going to align their work with their play, and it won't really matter, how much money they're making, as long as it's enough. And if we all live our values and maybe ask the question is, do I really need to buy that piece of clothing? Fast fashion, for example. Do I really need to replace my car? It's only got 100,000 miles. It could probably still go another 50,000 miles. If more of us leveled up our own lives and had a little bit more emotional capacity and resilience than to think beyond ourselves and think about our communities and think about our planet, it wouldn't take nearly the combativeness that we're experiencing now. I'm right, you're wrong. It's it's the planet, it's not us human beings that's causing the rising global temperatures and severe weather and drought and fire. If I'm wrong, we're just going to have cleaner air and cleaner water. But if I'm right that human beings really are part of this, Mother Nature doesn't really care if we survive. This is the sixth life, what do they call it? When there's a transition and sometimes 10%, sometimes a third of life is killed off because it doesn't adapt. Think about the dinosaurs. So there's no guarantee that we're going to be on this planet unless we figure out how to work together and adapt to the changing climate. And so my belief is that business can be a much, much greater force for good. And I invite you to join me in that mission. So in closing, what I want to mention is that this work for me is so purposeful. And yes, I can get a bit strident with my own family as regenerative life and leadership and career or life leadership and business guide, a new term that I'm using instead of coach or consultant. Again, with Joe Pine and the transformation economy, he talks about the shifting role of from coach to guide, using wisdom rather than answers, providing answers to others, but asking better questions. The reason why I've been so committed to this for the last 4 years, and we're in the process of selling our home so that I can lower my monthly nut so I can keep doing this work, because in the recent changes in the United States, our government policies, the US, Israel, Iran conflict that's been impacting now a lot of the Middle East, people aren't wanting to hire coaches as much as they used to. So I'm absolutely dedicated to this work because I want to be able to look Ian and Catherine, my two adult children, and even more importantly, Daisy and either Liam Hunter, I don't know which name he will adopt, so that when they ask, "Hey, Papa, what did you do to make a difference in the world? Were you a part of the mess?" And I definitely have been a part of the mess. I unknowingly was a road warrior. I traveled hundreds of thousands of miles over the course of being a 10-year road warrior. I'm committed to doing the work to clean up my own mess and then to inspire others to do the same, so that together we can look each other in the eye and say, hey, we did the best that we could with what we had to make a positive difference. And the Regenerate show is really all about how do many people work through their own messy personal and professional transformations and know that the mess is probably always going to be with us. The messy middle is not going to end. It's a journey, not a destination. So, like all good sailors, it's about the process of the adventure. And yes, we love getting into the port and celebrating with great food and drink and storytelling. So the destination does matter. However, the messy middle, I think, is always going to be part of our journey, should you choose to accept it. Cue Mission Impossible theme. Dun, 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 dun. So my vision is bold, that business can be a force for good. I make no apology for it. And I hope that transformation, and especially regenerative, what would nature do, the logic of life, how might that really guide our decision making? So our next port of call, fellow K4HD.com media host, is Angela Sharp, who'll be my guest next week. We'll be navigating through her messy middle as well as mine, and we're going to be talking about a theme: break out of the simulation. Break out of the simulation. Angela is a business and tech project and program manager, and we're going to be discussing, some difficult questions about what we're seeing as the elders in our respective communities. How are young people, struggling, and how can we maybe help them find their core values, their ikigai, their brand, take themselves to market in a way that will give them more joy, more agency, more freedom, greater wealth, and enjoy the journey. So thank you very much for letting me drone on for almost 45 minutes. I hope you had fun today. I know I did. I hope that you feel inspired and empowered. And on behalf of the whole Talk4 Media team, please stay healthy, stay safe. We need you. We're better together.
Thank you for listening to Regenerate with Captain Dave on K4HD Radio. We invite you to give yourself grace and embrace the messy middle. See you every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Until then, you got this.